What is going on, everybody? Welcome to some more Jack of All Trades Division 2 content. I dropped the gameplay in countdown of the Swapstorm build last week, and now it's time for the build video because I think there might be a little more going on under the hood than you may have realized with this build. So let's do the quick overview, like always, with our build guides, and then we'll jump into the individual pieces, talk about how everything's playing together, as well as some variants that you guys can set up for yourself for your own fun. Let's take a look. Okay, so I started by specifically making this for countdown because I thought that'd be a good environment where we're getting a lot of short-range encounters. The playstyle of this is very, very aggressive, and you have to be close. It's not even just that it's optimized for close range, you pretty much have to be with how the vigil works and also the weapons that we're choosing for the build. So going back to difficulty, I thought countdown would be a great place for that, and that's what the version I'm going to show you now, and the one that in the gameplay, of course. But you can also use it in heroic missions, I think, pretty effectively with just a couple tweaks. The build type is short range DPS, as I talked about, and the purpose of making this build was to combine the very obvious synergy between the Vigil backpack and the Centurion Scabbard exotic holster that we just got with this season, because they read both on swapping, and there's so much synergy that we can get there. We're doing big damage with this combination. Overall, the farmability, I would say, is easy. We're not doing anything too crazy with the rolls. We're rolling strikers off of red for a couple pieces, but overall you should have some blue strikers anyway, and you get the holster and actually one copy of the backpack from going through your seasonal track as rewards, and then you can farm more backpack versions if you want. Okay, let's get into the game here and see what we're working with. So this is the build setup that I came up with. We'll start by talking about that synergy between the backpack, the Vigil, and the Centurion Scabbard. Okay, so the backpack is giving us huge damage. If you look at the talent here, Versatile was always super, super strong, but I never really used it because I found it situational, and it was kind of, is the juice worth the squeeze sort of scenario. But with the perfect version, we're getting 45% amplified damage within 50 meters with our shotguns and our SMGs. And you'll notice here that the damage across the different weapon types is different amounts. So it drops down to 40% for the faraway enemies beyond 25 meters with rifle and marksman rifle, and then it's only 15% for that specific range of 15 to 25 with LMGs and ARs, which are the most versatile type of weapons, but ironically you're not getting that much damage out of it. Now, as you'll see in the gameplay, how it works is you swap back and forth between the weapon types. Notice how it says at most once per 5 seconds per weapon type, so you can't have two SMGs and go back and forth. You do need to swap to a different weapon type, but because shotguns and SMGs, both of these classes are in that initial range of 50 meters, those are the weapons we're choosing. So we're basically going back and forth between a shotgun and SMG, and we're getting 10 seconds of this huge 45% amplified total damage, which is crazy. So that's a lot of damage just from our backpack, right? And so we're trying to synergize this to put us, to allow our build to put us into situations where we can survive and take advantage of this 15 meters big damage. So that's the backpack, and so that summarizes the swapping that's going on here. And the other swap piece is the Centurion Scabbard, which also gives alternating buffs depending on your swapping. Now, I had a whole video on the Centurion Scabbard, so go check it out if you want to see some more details about what to think about when building for the Centurion Scabbard. But essentially we get a burst buff and a sustain buff. And the other thing too is these last for 12 seconds, but our Vigil over here is 10 seconds. So we know that we're going to have the buff from this, but we're pacing for our Vigil because we always want that huge damage from the 10 seconds of Versatile. And the one piece bonus gives us swap speed, which normally wouldn't be that useful. We're not swapping that much, but for this build specifically, and the fact that it comes on the named piece, it synergizes great. So those are the two staples of the build, right? So we got an exotic, we're getting a named with backpack, and then we have to fill the rest of our slots. And that's where we have enough room to put a gear set. And I opted for strikers for, the most damage that we could do to add on top of this as well is strikers, and the chest is also adding even more damage. Now I talked about this in the gameplay while I was playing around with it, but the chest, right, is adding us 100 more stacks, but it's not increasing the damage per stack. That's what the backpack does. So normally I wouldn't recommend running the chest. I don't actually use it that much, especially if you're just using the chest and not the backpack. But the shotguns and very high RPM weapons are what gets those stacks up and keeps them up very, very quickly. And we've got both on this build. I'm going to talk about the weapon choices in a little bit, but essentially, no matter what you end up picking, it's going to be a shotgun and an SMG. That's how we're setting up for this, right? So normally, even the slower firing SMGs still shoot pretty fast, and the shotguns with their pellets is going to get us a lot of stacks up for that chest of Striker's battle gear. So we're choosing Strikers to fill in the rest of those 4 pieces to bring our build together with those 6. Okay, now for the rolls, which you probably didn't see in the gameplay, is I'm actually running 2 blues, and just 2 blues. My minor rolls are, chance damage everywhere except 2 pieces I put repair skills. Okay, so I have repair skills on these 2 pieces, and they came red, and then the other ones I have blue on. So overall we're 4 red, and with 2 blue, and we're only trading off 2 minor attributes for repair skills to make our healing a little bit better. And of course we're in countdown, so all of our mod slots are protection from elites, which is, the highest yield purpose in countdown with all the elites that we're fighting. And so this setup is where you can play around with it for yourself to see what type of balance you want. Like I talked about, you have to be within that 50 meters. So we're always rushing and putting ourselves really up close and personal for this build. And we're going to be able to take out enemies really, really fast and do a lot of damage with, swapping with the versatile and the holster, plus the weapons we're running do big damage, especially burst damage. SMGs and shotguns are the best weapon types for that as well. But the thing that we have to balance is actually being able to survive up close, right? So I found a pretty good balance between running the 2 blues, the 2 repair skills, and then actually I'm running Technician. I'm going for the shield, which is going to be tier 3 because of the 2 blues and the Technician skill tier. And then this is going to be tier 1, and we're getting a little extra healing from the Technician skill tree. So for me, after playing around with it, this was a good balance of, not trading off a ridiculous amount of damage. We're only 2 cores, 2 minors, and that's pretty much it off a full damage build. Plus, it's allowing us to use the Vigil, which is, that 45% amplified total damage is just crazy, right? So normally, a full red striker build, for example, wouldn't be able to take advantage of this type of backpack. If you're playing with an AR, you're only going to get 15% if you're also hitting them in between 50 and 25 meters. Here we know we're getting really, really high uptime, basically 100% uptime on this 45 plus the striker stacks plus the Centurion Scabbard giving us damage in both burst and sustain types as well. So huge, huge, huge damage that we're getting really, really high uptime. Let's talk about the specialization and how that contributes to the variations as well. So I'm running Technician here because I want the skill tier, and also we get an extra 10% skill healing, which is nice. So this, I think, is really solid. It's a really solid choice, and you get a little extra damage if you are fighting any drones. The other choice that I typically go for in Countdown is Survivalist over here because you get the extra protection from elites, and you could drop the shield and then run the Mender. This is a very similar setup to that other Countdown build that I had done before, where we're running the Mender and the repair drone. So you could drop the shield for that. For me, the point of this was to be tanky and have enough survivability so that I can just get up close and focus on the swapping. I don't want to have to worry about managing my skills. So I get enough healing from the fixer, and someone else is probably running Vanguard or something like that, as you saw in that clip that I dropped. And if things get a little too dicey, pulling the shield out is going to give you enough breathing room to not get overwhelmed and to keep getting your damage out by focusing on swapping between the two weapons. So those are the two specializations picks I would say to go for, at least for the countdown setting. And that's pretty much all of the pieces. So the real anchor here is the backpack and the holster. And then we're filling in with strikers for damage, and then it's up to you to figure out how much survivability you think you need to be able to play up close like that and be comfortable. Now let's talk about the weapons. Okay. So you need a shotgun and an SMG, and these are the ones that I picked. And we'll also talk about how the Centurion Scabbard comes into play as well. So shotgun-wise, the light glue is based on the Super 90, and it shoots really fast and does a lot of damage. Brazen is one of the best shotgun damage talents, and with perfect Brazen on here, the light glue, it doesn't actually do more damage, but it makes it easier to proc. You only need 4 pellets to hit, so that's only half your pellets are hitting, and then you're getting huge amplified damage on your next shot. The other thing to take into account is we want talents that don't activate on kill. We want talents that are up and ready to go right away. So for shotguns, Brazen I think is definitely the pick. All the other ones that involve like reloading or getting kills or something like that, we don't need to worry about that. We're just going to our shotgun and we're draining our mag, finishing our tube of shells, and then we're swapping out of it. We are using the shotgun. I've chosen to use it with the mag size and reload speed. So you'll see when we swap to our shotgun, we'll actually have 12 in the tube, and then we're going to drain it, and then we're going to swap out into our SMG. That's going to get even huger, even more burst damage from the rate of fire and weapon damage on one of our best bursters in the game already with Ouroboros. And then when we swap back to the shotgun, we're using that auto reload feature from the Centurion Scabbard buff that's going to automatically reload the tube, so we're ready to go. And you'll see that in the gameplay. And then for the SMG, like I said, we're using the Oreo, our exotic pick. This one's a really good pick because it does huge damage. It's got a very snappy reload. It's a really good burst. And we're going to be going through around 3 mags of it, so it's got, decent sustain. We're kind of focusing on burst for our SMG pick, and we're getting even more burst damage, like I said, from the holster. And the other thing that's nice about the Oreo is that all the damage is up front. There's the talent here is basically useless. We don't ever really care about it, but we're getting upfront damage just from the raw stats of the weapon, and that's what counts for the Oreo. Like I said with the shotgun, you don't want something that requires like an on-kill or something like that to proc. The Brazen, we won't have it for that first shot, but after that first shot, the rest of the shots, assuming we're hitting at least 4 pellets, is going to have that amplified damage. With the Oreo from the first shot, each mag is going to be having that full maximum damage output. In terms of weapon options, it has to be shotgun SMG. You don't have to go with an exotic. I would recommend an exotic. For the SMG category, I would say the Ouroboros is your best exotic pick. And in shotguns, you could go with the Scorpio, would be pretty cool. And maybe you want to play around with giving different buffs from the Centurion Scabbard to, shotgun SMG, swap it around depending on what you're looking for. So those are the 2 exotics that I would pick. In terms of high ends, I think the light glue is really the best pick shotgun-wise. But, with how this is working, it's so fun. Getting the buffs from the holster really makes the gun feel like completely different and super fun to play around with it. Giving it the rate of fire or the mag buff. And then Vigil is going to make them all strong anyway. So there's really a lot of options that you can play around with, and they're all going to perform pretty well. I think the light glue is the best for high-end shotgun. And for high-end SMG, I don't think I have one, but you might want to run something like a tactical vector with measured is, I think, going to be your best burst option in the high-end territory these days with the rebalancing. I wouldn't bother running something like fast hands. Maybe you could run fast hands and get another mag in. The important thing is the timing. So I talked about burst versus sustain damage when optimizing for what weapons you're choosing for the holster. But because we're using the Vigil with our 10-second window, it's really about optimizing for the 10-second window. So you want to be able to get through just enough mags, like a sort of an even amount of mags for that 10-second window. You don't want to be caught out at like a weird timing when your buff is finishing and either you still have bullets and you're wasting them, or you need to hit a really long reload that's taking up time of your buff. Because as soon as you swap to the SMG with how we're using it, it needs to be ready to go. You either need to reload beforehand, before you swap off, or reload when you swap into it. The shotgun is the one that's getting the auto loading feature, so that one's always going to be ready. But our SMG, that's why we care about having a really snappy reload, so we can top it off before we swap out of it. And then we never really use the pistol here. We're just swapping back and forth between shotgun and SMG. I'm going to take you to the gun range to show you how it works, but I also recommend you just watch the gameplay in Countdown so you see a more practical example, and then we can talk about different variants. Alright, before we start shooting, one more thing I wanted to talk about here was the mods that I picked. I'm actually using optimal range, because you see if we get rid of the optimal range, it's only 11, and I want to be able to make sure our peak damage is getting out there to that 15 meters, which is the damage cap on Versatile. So I'm choosing to go for optimal range, which I think is a really, really strong pick in our attachment slot these days with the new buff. Classic crit chance here. We don't need to care about reload speed because we're never actually reloading this thing. And then I'm going rate of fire as well on the tube. Normally the 20% reload speed is really strong and an obvious pick for these shell-fed shotguns. But again, because we're not reloading it, we need that rate of fire is going to give us even more damage output. And then when we swap back to it with the Centurion Scabbard, it's ready to go anyway. So we never need to worry about reloading. Now what does that look like? So my first swap into the SMG, you see that empty head is going to give us that rate of fire. So I can get a few mags in, just about a fourth one if everything's perfect. And then I swap, and so now we're getting that double bonus. So you'll see that Versatile buff. And then we swap back, and then we're getting that Versatile on the SMG, plus the rate of fire and weapon damage from the holster. And we're doing, clearly this is a lot of damage. And then you'll see a drop off there, and you can hear it in the rate of fire as well, because we shot past our 10 seconds of Versatile and that 12 seconds as well of the Centurion Scabbard. So let's say I'm running around with my SMG and I get in range of combat. Then I'm going to swap. Boom. You see I finished my shotgun off, but now it had 12 in the tube and it's ready to go. You get all your shots out, swap out into the SMG, and the super high fire rate on the SMG plus the shotgun pellets is, we always got high stacks. And we just go back and forth like that. Huge damage. And you see there, I forgot to reload it on my last swap. And that's why having a super fast reload is really nice on their SMG pick. And that's just how it's going to work. We're going to be swapping back and forth. You want to keep in mind how many mags. So I know that I'm going to go through one tube of 12 with the buff on my shotgun and then swap off immediately. I'm not going to bother reloading it. I'm going to go right back to the SMG, and that should give me enough time to reproc my Versatile buff after the 5-second cooldown. And then my SMG, I know I can get about 3 mags in, and it's got a snappy reload, so even like you saw in the firing range, if I miss that reload at the end of the cycle, when I get back to it, it's really snappy to get back in to shooting. And that's that. check the gameplay out, and I'll probably release some more gameplay on this build because I've really been enjoying it. Alright, let's talk about variations here. So, this one is built for countdown, like I talked about with the specialization and some of the roles here. The anchor, again, is the Vigil plus the Centurion Scabbard. Let's say we stick with these weapon choices because they're really solid. If I were to mix it up for missions, I would get rid of the protection from elites. I would probably stick with the shield for missions, whereas in countdown you can go with Survivalist and the Mender Seeker Mine. I would get rid of the protection from elites for normal gameplay. I don't really run prot for general use, mostly just countdown. I'd put in repair skills and incoming repairs everywhere, maybe an extra blue, just to make sure I'm nice and tanky. And I think that'll be really solid for getting through heroic missions. You do have to be conscious that we have to be close range, so choose missions or use this build on missions where you know there's going to be a lot of close range encounters and not forced range encounters. Like there are some where you have to shoot people across like an alley or something like that, you know, on the opposite balcony. I forget the name of the mission that's like that. But yeah, this is going to be really solid for general purpose. I probably wouldn't use it in open world because it's, you know, too large distances and too risky to get flanked. And we're not super tanky. We are mostly a damage build. And we're playing a little bit risky because we have to get up close to get that damage. But once we do, it's dealing huge damage. So check out some variations if you want to play heroic, and let me know if you want to see some heroic mission gameplay with this as well. I'm curious about making a legendary version of this, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see a legendary version of the Swapstorm. Alright y'all, that is pretty much the whole build and just about everything I wanted to talk about here with how I got it set up. We got huge synergy with perfect versatile, Centurion Scabbard, really strong picks for a shotgun and SMG. We're doing huge damage and with minimal trade-off, couple blues, couple repair skills, and of course we're running protection from elites for countdown. Alright everyone, that's it for the build video today. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you check out the gameplay as well. There's going to be more build videos coming. I'm getting the thoughts together. There's a lot to play around with here with the new season, and I'm really enjoying this build here. I like the dynamic of swapping around. It keeps it a little more interesting when just going through countdown over and over again. So I really recommend you trying this build. I'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy.